the emergency beacon wailed through the dying starship as Captain James Verdan fought the controls with everything he had left. The solar flare had destroyed their navigation systems, leaving the small exploration vessel vulnerable to the gravitational pull of the uncharted planet below. Sweat dripped down his temple as he guided the burning hull toward the crystalline landscape, praying the impact wouldn't be fatal. The ship screamed as it descended, metal groaning against the thin atmosphere, until finally, mercifully, the landing struts touched solid ground. Silence followed the crash, broken only by the hiss of cooling engines and the soft beeping of emergency systems. James crawled from the wreckage, his body aching with every movement. The air outside was cool and strange, carrying scents he couldn't identify. Towering formations of pale blue and violet crystals stretched across the landscape like a frozen forest, casting prismatic shadows across the sand. He was beginning to think he might be the only survivor when he saw her. She moved between the crystal formations with impossible grace, her skin shimmering with an iridescent quality that caught the light like opals. Her clothing seemed woven from moonlight itself, flowing and ethereal. Long silver hair cascaded down her back, and her eyes were the color of deep space, endless and knowing. When she noticed him, she stopped, tilting her head slightly. No fear crossed her features, only curiosity and something that might have been recognition. "Welcome," she said, her voice like harmonics, resonating through his chest. "We have been expecting someone." James struggled to his feet, instinctively reaching for a weapon he didn't have. "Who are you? What is this place?" "I am Princess Celestine, sovereign of the seventh realm," she replied, moving closer with measured steps. "This is Vespera, and you have been guided here by forces beyond your understanding." Something about her presence calmed him. James found himself relaxing his defensive posture, drawn to her like a compass needle to north. "My ship crashed. My crew—" "Your crew is safe," Celestine interrupted gently. "We retrieved them while you were unconscious. Come, you need medical attention and sustenance." As she extended her hand, James felt a jolt of electricity run through him. Her touch was warm, and the moment their fingers met, something shifted in his chest. Her eyes widened slightly, and he knew she felt it too. That single moment of contact seemed to strip away all the walls he'd built over a lifetime of military service. In her gaze, he saw curiosity mirrored with unexpected vulnerability. They walked through the crystalline forest, in silence, hands still intertwined. And James realized something extraordinary was happening. This wasn't just attraction. It felt deeper, like two halves of a whole recognizing each other. The alien queen beside him began to smile, that knowing smile that made his heart race with anticipation and wonder. As the purple sky deepened above them, James Verdan understood that his life had just fundamentally changed, and somehow he was ready. Celestine led James through a hidden passage between two massive crystal formations, their surfaces smooth and warm beneath his touch. The passage sloped downward, revealing an entrance carved with symbols that seemed to glow with inner light. As they descended, James's breath caught in his throat. Before them stretched an impossible city, suspended within an enormous cavern, built entirely of bioluminescent structures that pulsed with soft blues, greens, and ambers. Buildings spiraled upward like nautilus shells, connected by bridges of woven light. "Welcome to Sanctuary," Celestine whispered, watching his reaction carefully. This is the heart of Vespera, hidden from the hostile factions that hunt our kind. James could only stare, trying to reconcile everything he believed about the universe with what lay before him. It's beautiful, he managed. Celestine's fingers tightened around his hand. I wanted you to see it. I wanted you to see us as we truly are, not as conquerors or primitives, but as a civilization that values art, knowledge, and connection. A guardian sentinel approached them, towering and ethereal, its form composed of the same bioluminescent material as the city. It bowed deeply to Celestine before acknowledging James with what he perceived as respect. She spoke to it in her native language, melodic and complex, and it retreated to resume its patrol. As they walked through winding streets, Celestine showed him her world. They visited grand libraries where knowledge was stored in crystalline matrices, places where art decorated every surface, gardens where impossible flora bloomed in colors that had no names in human languages. With each moment, James fell deeper under her spell, not just because of her otherworldly beauty, but because of her passion for her world and her people. That evening, she brought him to her private chambers, a circular room where the walls themselves seemed to generate soft light. The space was intimate, with cushions and silks scattered across the floor. Celestine poured him a beverage that tasted like starlight and honey. Tell me about yourself, she said, settling beside him close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. Tell me about your world. James found himself speaking for hours, sharing his childhood on Earth, his dreams of exploration, his loneliness despite being surrounded by crew members. And Celestine listened with complete attention, occasionally reaching out to brush his arm or touch his hair with wonder. When he finally stopped talking, she leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. I have walked this realm for 3 centuries, she confessed, and never have I felt what I feel with you. It frightens me, James Verdon. Me too, he admitted, his hand rising to cup her luminous face. But I don't want it to stop. Their lips met softly, tentatively, and the world around them seemed to brighten. Her hands traced the contours of his shoulders, his back. Learning the topography of his human form with reverent curiosity, James breathed her in, that strange floral scent that made him intoxicated. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless and trembling, Celestine rested against him, her head on his chest. Tomorrow brings challenges, she murmured. There are those who will oppose what we are, but tonight, I want to be just with you. And in the glow of her sanctuary, James held the alien queen close, knowing he would defend her world, her people, and this impossible love with everything he possessed. The next morning brought urgency. A council member arrived with news that militant factions were mobilizing near the sanctuary's borders. Celestine explained that if she was to unite her fractured world and protect James and his crew, she would need to prove her legitimacy through the ancestral trials, a ritual that hadn't been performed in generations. James insisted on accompanying her, refusing to let her face it alone. They traveled to the temple at the planet's core, accompanied by Elder Prophet Morgath, an ancient being whose form seemed to shift between solid and ethereal. The temple was carved from a single massive crystal, its walls inscribed with the history of Celestine's people. Morgath explained that the trials would test 3 things: truth of heart, strength of will, and the depth of love that would be sacrificed for duty. The first trial took them into a chamber where visions manifested around them. James saw Celestine's memories, centuries of loneliness, watching her people suffer divisions, bearing the weight of leadership alone. He saw the moment she sensed his arrival on her world, a presence that called to something within her that had been dormant for lifetimes. In return, she witnessed his memories, his mother's face as he left Earth, the night he questioned whether his military career was worth his solitude. The exact moment he realized his heart was no longer his own. Tears streamed down both their faces as they emerged from the vision chamber. Celestine gripped his hand so tightly it almost hurt. "You know now what you're choosing," she said softly. "A woman bound to duty, to a world you've only just discovered, a responsibility that will demand sacrifice." James pulled her close, his fingers threading through her silver hair. "I'm choosing you," he breathed against her ear. "Exactly as you are. I've spent my whole life searching for something, and it was you." The second trial tested their physical and mental endurance together. They had to navigate a labyrinth, while the walls shifted around them, forcing them to communicate perfectly, to trust each other implicitly. James found himself amazed at how naturally they worked together, how her instincts complemented his training. They moved as one organism, and when they reached the center of the labyrinth, she kissed him fiercely, her breath warm against his mouth. The final trial was the most intimate. Morgath brought them to a chamber where they were asked to meditate together, their consciousness merging in a way only those deeply bonded could achieve. James found himself inside Celestine's mind, experiencing her essence directly. He felt her love for her people, like a burning star, her determination, her capacity for mercy, her passionate nature. And she felt him, his protective instincts, his thirst for adventure, his desperate need to be truly seen and valued. When they returned to their bodies, they were entwined, their foreheads pressed together, crying openly. Celestine's hands roamed his face, his neck, his chest, as if reassuring herself he was real. James lifted her into his lap, burying his face in her hair, and she gasped his name like a prayer. "I love you," she whispered. And he felt it resonate through every cell of his being. "And I love you," he replied, sealing it with a kiss that tasted of destiny. Morgath watched them with ancient eyes and bowed deeply. "The trials are complete. You are bonded now by more than law or ritual. You are bonded by truth itself." They emerged from the temple as partners, as one unit against whatever challenges lay ahead. Their love, no longer something to hide, but something to wield like armor. The sanctuary could not remain hidden forever. Within weeks, militant forces surrounded the crystalline forests, led by the ruthless warlord faction that sought to control all of Vespera. Celestine and James found themselves making preparations for a confrontation neither wanted, but both knew was inevitable. They moved to the mountain stronghold, where Celestine had called together members of a rebel alliance formed to resist the warlord's expansion. Rogue Commander Keston, a scarred warrior with sharp features and tactical brilliance, greeted them with respect, but reserved judgment. He'd known Celestine for years and was skeptical about her alliance with a human. That skepticism evaporated quickly when he witnessed the strategic genius of James, combined with Celestine's deep knowledge of her world's geography and politics. During their first war council in the Stone Chamber, James and Celestine presented a plan to divide the warlord forces, by targeting their supply lines, while simultaneously opening diplomatic channels with neutral territories. As James traced routes on the crystalline map, his hand brushed Celestine's repeatedly, and she would lean closer, their shoulders and thighs pressing together. It was a small intimacy, but it sustained them both amid the stress of planning for conflict. That night, with the mountain cold pressing against the stronghold's walls, James found Celestine on a high balcony overlooking the dark landscape. She stood wrapped in shimmering silks, her hair blown by wind that carried the scent of distant snow. "Are you afraid?" he asked, coming to stand beside her. "Terrified," she admitted, turning to him with vulnerability etched across her face. "What if our plan fails? What if I lead my people into unnecessary slaughter?" James cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Then we fail together, and we face the consequences together. But Celestine, you're not leading blindly. You have wisdom, and you have me." She pressed her palms against his chest, and he felt her heartbeat synchronize with his own. He pulled her closer, his mouth finding hers with gentle insistence. She responded eagerly, her fingers gripping his shoulders as if he might disappear. Their kiss deepened, became desperate, hungry with the knowledge that tomorrow morning they would march toward uncertainty. They retreated to his quarters, a simple stone chamber that had become their sanctuary within the stronghold. Celestine undressed slowly, revealing skin that seemed to glow with soft bioluminescence in the dim light. James breathed her in as he moved his lips across her neck, her shoulders, her collarbone. She gasped his name, her fingers tangling in his hair. Their lovemaking was tender and intense, a conversation without words, where they expressed fears, hopes, devotion, and desire. Afterward, they lay entwined, her head on his chest, his fingers drawing patterns across her bare back. She traced lines on his skin, mapping him, memorizing him. "If something happens tomorrow," she began, but he silenced her with a kiss. "Nothing's going to happen to us," he promised fiercely. "We're going to win this, and we're going to have a lifetime together on this beautiful world. We're going to build something extraordinary." "You have such certainty," she murmured against his shoulder. "Because I have you," he replied simply. They held each other through the night, drawing strength from their connection, preparing themselves for the battles ahead, while knowing that their love was worth fighting for. The battles came and went. The warlord forces were defeated not through violence alone, but through the coalition Celestine and James built. Neutral territories joined their cause. Compromises were negotiated. Slowly, Vespera transformed from a world divided by conflict into one united under Celestine's leadership, with James standing at her side as equal and partner. 6 months after the final peace treaty was signed, James stood in the great hall of the reconstructed palace on the planetary surface. The crystalline architecture had been expanded to merge aesthetic elements of both Vesperian design and human engineering. Celestine had insisted on it, a physical representation of two worlds becoming one. High Council members from across Vespera gathered, their forms shimmering with ceremonial light. Members of James's original crew attended as well, dressed in formal wear and marveling at everything around them. Ambassador positions had been negotiated. Earth and Vespera would establish trade routes, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense pacts. But before all that formality, there was this moment. Celestine appeared through a curtain of living light, and James's breath caught exactly as it had the first time he saw her. Her dress was woven from both human silk and Vesperian luminescent fiber, creating a gown that seemed to contain captured starlight. Her hair was adorned with crystals that refracted light into prismatic patterns. When she saw him standing at the altar, her eyes widened with joy and tenderness. As she walked toward him, James felt the weight of destiny, of two civilizations watching, of every choice and sacrifice that had led them here. When she took his hands, her touch grounded him in the present moment. James Verdan, the elder prophet Morgoth intoned, his ancient voice carrying through the hall. Do you take this woman, not just as partner, but as representative of a new covenant between worlds? I do, James said firmly, his eyes never leaving Celestine's face. And Celestine of the Seventh Realm, do you take this human as your equal, your anchor, and your heart's true home? I do, she whispered, tears streaming down her luminous cheeks. With everything I am. When Morgoth declared them bonded across all boundaries, the hall erupted in celebration. But James heard none of it. He was too focused on drawing Celestine close, on claiming her lips with a kiss that felt like a promise, a dedication, and a beginning, all at once. That night, in chambers where Earth and Vespera had truly merged, they lay together beneath a dome of transparent crystal, showing the stars above. James traced the bioluminescent patterns on her skin that seemed to activate when she was aroused. We did it, she breathed against his neck, her fingers still exploring his human form with wonder and desire. We brought two worlds together. No, James corrected, entering her slowly, watching her arch beneath him with pleasure. You did that. You had the vision. You had the courage. We did it together, she gasped, pulling his mouth down to hers as their bodies found their familiar rhythm. That's what makes it real. Afterward, they lay in the darkness, and James felt more at home than he ever had. Celestine had her head on his shoulder, one of her luminescent hands intertwined with his darker skin. The contrast, somehow perfect. Do you ever regret it? She asked quietly. Leaving everything you knew? James kissed her forehead. Only that I didn't find you sooner. This is everything I ever dreamed of, Celestine. It's you. It's us. It's this world we're building together. She lifted her head to kiss him one more time, softly, reverently. Then we have everything, she whispered. And as the stars wheeled overhead, visible through the crystal dome, James Verdan and Princess Celestine understood that they had transcended distance, biology, and destiny itself. They had become something new, a bridge between worlds, a testament to love's transformative power, and a beginning to a story that would echo through both their civilizations for generations to come.